It is a great honor and a privilege to introduce Eva Klein, and your maiden name was Adler.
Yeah.
And your mother's maiden name was also Klein.
And her sister married a Klein.
Sure.
She never changed her name.
Wow. So we here.
She remained Klein.
We're here in London, in Golders Green, and it's such an honor and a privilege to be with you. And Eva, you were born in Debrecen.
In Debrecen, Hungary.
What year were you born, or do you know the date when you were born?
Oh, it was in 1929, on the 6th of May, and King Charles III will honor me to be crowned on my birthday.
It's Canaan, it's wonderful.
It's nice of him, isn't it? Yeah.
And Eva, did you come from a very traditional family?
Yeah. I was born into a very traditional family, and yes, that's how I remember, but because my father died when I was a year old, the tradition was a little bit different later on.
And your parents, were there many generations in Hungary?
Sort of, because my parents, they were born part of Hungary, which in 1920, after the First World War, according to the peace treaty, Hungary was divided, and the part where they were born went to Romania. But all my family, my parents and my 3 brothers, they were all born in the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Even Gabor's father, he was the youngest of my 3 brothers. He was born in 1913, which was just a year before then. So, according to this calculation, they all Hungarian. Mind you, my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, she was born, I think, in Wiener Neustadt. She was from Austria. She spoke German and Yiddish, of course. All the Jews spoke Yiddish, and except us children, we didn't.
What, you spoke Hungarian?
Yeah, sure.
And did you understand Yiddish?
Not really. Because I learned German at school, and if it was nearer, I can suss it out, but Hungarians speaking Yiddish, oh my God. No, it was a thing,
And Eva, did you go to a Jewish school, or it was a public school?
Only, yeah.
And you remember the synagogue and the...
Sure. Don't forget, I was born a long, long time ago.
And growing up, did you have a very good childhood? Did you
yes, I mustn't complain.
Did you ever experience anti-Semitism?
Even it, when you are a child, you don't take it as anti-Semite. You just take it with a pinch of salt. I don't know. It's of course we knew that we were different and they were different, and even if you chum and they turned around and it's human beings, the nature, unfortunately. Why do they hate the Jews? Why not?
Did you have any non-Jewish friends, or were most of your friends Jewish?
Yes. as a child before the war, yes, we were friendly towards each other, but because I went to Jewish school, I only had school friends but we had non-Jewish girls in the class as well, because they liked to come to Jewish school.
And Eva, what did your parents do? I know your father died when you were just very young.
After a few years ago, we went back with Gabor and Susie to Romania, where my mother was born, not my father's place. And somebody there managed to get some papers from 1900, because my father was born 1882, my mother 1886, 4 years difference. And I'm sure it was a shidduch. What else? In 1906, they had to declare that they were singers, Jewish. Can't remember what else needed on the paper to be able to get married. So I got this paper from somebody who managed to get it from the authority there in Romania, from the place called, now in Romanian called Huedin, which is near Cluj in Romania. It's Colosvar.
That's the second largest city. That's the second largest city.
Yeah. And Huedin is called Banfi Hunyad, just simple like that, where my mother was born. My father was also from a place called Transylvania in once upon a time Hungary, and according to the paper it said my father's father name is Adler Moses, the child Benjamin, because needed my father's name somehow, and his mother, the late Cecilia Kupferstein, which means by the time the shidduch went on, my grandmother from my father's side wasn't alive. Mm-hmm. So my mother never had a mother-in-law. That's all I can tell you.
And Eva, what type of work did your father do, and when your father passed away, how did your mother survive?
On one of the paper it says teacher. I don't know what he taught. But when they got to Debrecen to settle, he was doing accounts to people, to a grocery wholesaler, when a little corner shop was for sale, and I think it was the wholesalers guy's idea for my father to take it over, because you need money. You got 3 children, not me, the boys, and it would be a very good earning possibility. My mother was a dressmaker, and they had the 3 sons, and they had to be educated. They needed the money because the school cost a lot of money. So eventually that's what they did. My mother did the sewing and my father did. And it came to 29 when my eldest brother was over 21, the second was 20, and the youngest was 16 when I was born. And as I said, a year later, all changed, and by that time, 2 of my brothers, the eldest, went to abroad. Abroad was Czechoslovakia, to Brno. He became an architect, and I have the, what you call Meldungsbook. Do you know what you call it? From the school attendant book or something, which says Ausländer.
Foreigner.
Bloody foreigner. And my second brother was in Budapest to study art, and he became an art teacher at the end. And the youngest was still in gymnasium, which wasn't for sports in Hungary. It was normal, like secondary or high school. And that's what happened. And his father decided, if my mother wants to carry on with the shop eventually, then he's not going to university. He will carry on with the shop and to make ends meet. That's what happened. He didn't go to university. He carried on with the shop, and my mother, to say thank you to her son, she bought the house opposite where we used to live. It was quite a big plot, and she arranged to get permission, because it was a residential area, to be able to use the sheds for trading purposes, to heating material. And that's what they did. They kept coal in these sheds, and they bought boots, and they carried on like nothing happened.
And then, Eva, what is your earliest recollections? What do you remember, if you remember your childhood, what are the first memories that you have?
Look, I remember first of all, I have no children. I never had to worry about my children and grandchildren and who is talking, who is not eating, and how do I get the food on the table. You know, my mind was working all the time, and when I remember, I go back. I am there, not just in mind. I position myself the same way as it happened.
And what do you remember from Hungary?
Look, I remember that my 3 brothers, they never lifted an arm. They never hit me. They educated me, especially Gabor's father, because he was always at home, he taught me basic to play chess. I was 4 or 5 years old. And when my friends came over and it was a rainy day, we couldn't run around, then he thought it would be the best to play with us to do arithmetic. You know, adding up and dividing and multiplying, and it paid off.
It did?
Yeah, it did. I could add up before I could read. And music was always in our house. And I had to tap it, what I heard. It was education. You don't know when you are a child, but automatically you do it. Yeah.
And do you remember going to the synagogue on the Chagim, or?
Yes, sure. My mother had a seat in Debrecen, in Pastutsa, and it was like going to the loft in our place. From outside there is a wooden thing to go up, and immediately by the door she was the second or third seat, and I had to go there for Iskor and the other children went to play. They were waiting for Iskor to get out, and for Iskor I had to go back.
And Eva, do you know what happened to your father, why he passed away? Was he ill, or do you know?
I don't think he was. I never heard about him being ill or anything. The only thing I heard that his cousin was taken ill, and my father accompanied him to the clinics, and he had a fatal heart attack at the clinics, and he died on the spot. But they didn't speak about it. I just knew that my family, my mother, and we had somebody who lived in helping out my father's time, because she used to tell me about your father. He came home from the shop. He was so tired. As soon as he came in, on his foot, and you were riding on his back. But nobody was saying anything about him being ill, or just one day I remember I was taken to the cemetery, and it was a big black thing, and they said my father is sleeping under this, and that's it. Just sometimes when I couldn't do this and you couldn't do that, and the other kids, the mother wouldn't tell out, and they run to daddy. Daddy will run, and I had nowhere to run, and asked daddy to let me do whatever they didn't want me to. But a child is a child, you know, you just get used to the circumstances and you carry on regardless, and that's it. My brothers, they wore tzitzis, especially Gabor's father, because he was the youngest and he was at home. my second middle brother, he got married when I was 7 years old. And those days, 7 years old is a child. We were children, not 15 months old and sitting in the pram doing bored, because it wasn't like this.
And did you go to the wedding? Do you remember?
Sure.
And you remember the wedding?
I even remember what my sister-in-law was wearing after the wedding. I don't remember her gown, but I remember that she changed to something. It was yellow with brown spots, and the material was a woven, but some little holes in it. That's what I remember, the way it was. Yes, I remember that. I remember his father's wedding, but I was already nearly 10 years old. Was a lady. And my brother and sister-in-law, they missed the train because the wedding was in her parents' place, near Tosh, yeah. Last station, Patroha, because they didn't even have a what you call a station. They didn't have a train station.
They didn't have a train stop.
You had to get off Patroha, was the last, and somebody came to collect you in a britchka. What a britchka? In a horse carriage.
Horse and carriage.
Yeah, and one day I lost my coat. My mother had made one for a fortune. It was a fortune, dark blue, and the lady who made it, she was a specialist for children's garments. And when I went to Nyírtos to visit, it slipped from the coach and came back without the coat. And of course I didn't say anything because I didn't know what happened and how it happened. The only thing I knew, and when they were looking for the coat, I had to admit that I came back without it. They were not clapping of joy, I can tell you, but they didn't hit me. No. Sorry.
And Eva, what do you remember when the war started, or?
When the war started, it wasn't funny. When the whole family was in the shop now. My brother, my sister-in-law, his mother, my mother, but she stopped doing her own sewing business. It was only the shop. And they started taking away sugar and flour and God knows, bits and pieces. They were not allowed to sell in the shop. So hardly anything to...
And was this Hungarian or
Hungarian, yeah.
The Germans hadn't come into the town yet?
No, they didn't need the German to act like you were born today. They didn't have to teach the Hungarian. They could graduate.
And And did you, when Hitler came to power in 1933, did your family discuss what was going on in Germany, that it might come to Poland?
Look, it was always on
Hungary?
the agenda, but you take it with a pinch of salt if you are still there. The trouble started when my brother was called to do hard labor camp, but after a while he came back home. And my eldest brother, he lived and worked in Budapest. And he belonged there. He had to enroll from there, and the authority came to us, blaming my mother that they sent for him to enroll, and he didn't go because probably he was enrolled or what, in two places, in Budapest as well as in Debrecen, and my mother said, he's already, at the end he ended up in Mauthausen and never returned. But it was before that they were claiming that he never received the letter because he was already in hard labor camp somewhere else. And this time, as I said at the beginning, they only I don't know how many weeks or months, and they let them return before later on they were taken.
And how long did you manage to stay in your house and with the shop?
The shop was eventually had to be closed. I can't remember when, but you couldn't go there anymore. But my mother saved everything what she could, because she was always cooking. The children, she had to feed the people. And the place where we lived, it was part of the small ghetto. In Debrecen, most of the Jews were living there, especially later on, because from the little villages they came to Debrecen because it was a very good place to live and earn and work and whatever the work right or right. Anyway, it was part of the small ghetto. We could stay until they vacated because the Hungarians needed the place for them, and we had to move to the big ghetto, which was a little bit further away. And somebody took us in, my mother and myself. I can't remember who else. Maybe my sister-in-law and Gabor, because my brothers, they were already in camps, except my second brother was walking with a limp. He had some childhood, whatever happened, and one leg was shorter than the other. And because of them, he didn't go to hard labor camp, but he was a teacher in the gymnasium which was only for boys. I mean, mainly because the girls could only join from 5th grade. And he did voluntary afternoon sessions. He taught photography, bookbinding, because those days, you know, and they had to recover. Different artworks, and of course carpentry, which means to make the blind, the frame for the canvas to put it on, and how to cut it in wings, you know, to assemble it and use it. And he bought the wheel to make pottery. Yes, he bought it himself for the school. I did it as well, because it was fun, you know. You had to just, anyway, because he was limping to school, a few Hungarian gentlemen, Arrow Cross gentlemen, I don't know whether you heard about them, they managed to catch him, and they walked back with him to his home, and they beat him up so badly that they damaged his kidneys, and luckily 2 doctors, a dentist and an eye doctor, were near where we were in the ghetto, and they managed to give him some painkillers, but he suffered with this until he died at the age of 55 in Israel. Yeah.
And Eva, can I just ask, do you remember when you left your house and you went to the ghetto? Did you know that you were going to never come back to the house, or did you have the feeling that this was...
Look, the only thing was in mind, you could only take one thing. Then I just turned 15, and it was just before the 15th birthday, but I had my birthday present early, a beautiful leather, I shouldn't say that, but I'm not vegan, a beautiful handbag. It was called the underarm handbag. You don't put it on your... And I filled it up with photos. I could take what I like. I wanted to take this one because I only knew my mother with, and it was her when she was a young girl, when she was growing up, when she was before she got married, and people, you know, the family. And this was very important for me, to take the photos. And another nice gentleman saw it, that it's dear to me. He took it from me, and it was raining. He opened it, and the whole lot went into the Maru. That's what I remember.
Was that an arrow?
This was
a Hungarian
no, sure.
arrow cross as well?
Sure. I told you that the Hungarians, you know what my mother said? They suck anti-Semitism, they suck it in with the mother's milk. And she was right.
And you
Wasn't she?
you remember the incident where he grabbed your present and
You can't say anything. Not like the
No.
Israelis said, how come you couldn't find, you couldn't find. You can't imagine that it was, I don't know when you reached Israel, but you couldn't do. You couldn't.
And can I just ask, Eva, when you left your house, did you have non-Jewish neighbors? Did they see you
Yeah.
leaving? Did anybody try and help you or
Help,
help the Jews when they were
no,
leaving?
they couldn't wait to get rid of us.
And these are neighbors that you had been neighbors for years?
Lovely, lovely neighbors. The immediate, our house was 14, and the next neighbor was 12 from that side. And she had a girl, I think she adopted her. And my mother said, did you hear what the girl said? I'm not going to wash their clothes. I don't know what she's referring to, but I don't know how she got some clothes from us to wash. Maybe somebody took it there or nicked it. Just, I remember my mother saying that she was referred to the Adler's clothes. I don't know, it's just...
And Eva, who went to the ghetto? You went with your mother?
Yeah.
And your...
We were... Yes, I say that in this respect we were very lucky, because I had my mother, my brother, his wife, her parents, Gabor's mother, Gabor, and her sister, number 2 from the top, with 2 children. We were 11. We were 11, a family. We were deported. We were on the train. I think it was Kapes, Agnes Kapes or somebody in Canada, I think. She was on the same train, because I remember reading a little bit of her writing that she was on the train 4 days and 5 nights, because we were in the wagon late, and they only started whenever. And the train started towards Auschwitz, but what happened, it's not clear in my mind, and I didn't research whether it was the rail bombed or what else did they say, the reason. I remember Gabor's mom, I was lucky to be able to find a place next to the wall of the train, so I could slide down and sit. I sat on my leg, and I didn't know who was sitting on my leg. It was myself. And my sister-in-law, she was standing next to me because it was a little thingy, and she could see something when we started moving back from that position. And she said, "Oh, we are going back," which meant we got to the point when we couldn't go through the frontier towards Auschwitz. They turned the trains back, and we arrived to Austria at the end, to Strasshof.
And Eva, can I just ask you, in the ghetto, how long were you in the ghetto?
I can't remember the time. The only thing I remember, we were at home, and my mother was cooking no end. And then we had to go to the other ghetto, and we were in the other ghetto also a few days. And then we were taken to the brick factory. And the brick factory was, we were not in a building, it was a long thing in the open, a storage. Only the top was covered, the side was open, and at the side another Hungarian gentleman with his dog and the whip was trying to make order. How long we stayed there, I don't know, but we were there quite a few days, and the side was the latrine, full with jewelry and money, because you had to give in everything. But they said, if I have to get it or I don't give it to them, I just, yeah, that's what the bloody Jews did, some of them.
And can I ask, in the brick factory and in the ghetto, were there any German soldiers, or it was only Hungarian?
Forget about Germans. I haven't seen a German until I got to Austria.
So the Austrians,
They didn't need any bloody Germans. They did it themselves. They could have told them better.
And even on the train, when you were on the cattle car going, it must have been terrible. No, did you have food?
Look, it was terrible when you are 80 in a confined space instead of animals, human animals with two buckets, one with drinking water and the other the water from the bucket.
And did you have any food? Did they give you any food while you were on the train?
You must be joking. No, it was no food. Eventually we arrived to Strasshof, which is just under Vienna, and then they delised, and we could have a shower, and it was water. And then they made groups, and our group, we tried always to get together. This 11 of us, we were always together. And I can't remember how we got to the 15th Bezirk district in Vienna, which was very near the Westbahnhof. It was a school, and we were put on the 3rd floor, all 11 us, and at the end, I'm not sure whether 28 or 30 people in one class in bunk beds, 3-tier. I can name 28. I remember the way everybody was staying, but it might have been 30. And we lived 30 together.
For how long were you there?
We were there, we arrived maybe in June 44, or maybe in May, but could have been June. I don't remember the exact date, but we were there until 45 April.
In Vienna, in
Vienna, in the same place. But don't forget, it was a school building. It was a class once upon a time, and we had a bunk bed. We didn't have to lie next to each other or what, and we could wash in the toilet. It was a bowl or something, you know, some humanity, a little something. But we had to go out to work. First, I had to go. It didn't matter. They took us out to work. First, I remember with one of the boys from the same room, we were taken to the Central Friedhof, it's the cemetery, where they had school benches there, and we had to shift it from there to the other side of the building. You didn't ask why, but that's what we had to do. And then we were taken out to do after bombing, because Vienna was bombed quite frequently, and we had to clear the robbers. I remember being in the opera house. Oh my God, I thought, I will come here one day. Anyway, that's what we did. And then somebody needed children to do holz hacking, chop the wood, which meant that where I was placed was, you know, the bombs were delivered in crates, little crates, and the crates came to this Holzplatz, where we had to chop it with, it doesn't show now, what you call this chopper.
Like an axe?
Yeah, and I got one on my foot as well. I just touched it, you know, and that's what we had to do. to cut. Then I thought my mother had a professional, you know, he used to come to do for the trade, to do the thing, and my mother paid for it. And we had some liquid to live on, and that's what we had to do. And then, if we were lucky, then the hoist was working to fill up the trucks, because we had to deliver this wood and coals in 25-30 kilo in a bag to the hospitals and schools and such. And we were sitting on the top of the thingy to deliver it. That's what we did with two other girls, and both of them were called Magda Weiss Magda, both of them. One was from Debrecen and one from the neighboring thing, from the same lager where I used. And we used to, we lived in the 15th district, and I think this Holzplatz was in the 16th, and sometimes we could go on the tram, but somebody came to collect us to go there. And because it was tours, you know, the Austria, they had enough of the war as well, and they gave us a little bit of sandwich or
Were
piece
these
of bread.
Austrians?
Austrians, yeah.
And even were the guards guarding you that you couldn't escape, or?
Nobody thought about escaping. Where'd you go? If you will find, then.
Can I interject a little bit? My mother said this, you know, I didn't experience. My mother also went out with Eva and all the other girls after an air raid or a bombing, and they cleared up all the streets and everything. So around the corner when they were going home, there was a bakery, and my mother used to go into the bakery and used to get food for us, you know, because I was a kid and my two cousins were there also. And every day as they were going home, the baker called my mother in and gave her food, I don't know, cake or bread or whatever. But anyway, about the security, there was one guy, an older guy, who was an engineer, and he hated Hitler. Well, this is my mother told me. He said Hitler was a hund, a dog, this and that. Why did he have to do this? So security was nothing. There was no security. But where are you gonna go? She's right. I mean, you are in the middle of the war, surrounded with Germans. The other side was Russians. You were Jewish. You know, I mean, it's a terrible thing. You know, my son-in-law asked the same question. Why couldn't we escape?
You know where this shop was? The corner of Goldschlagstrasse.
I know. I mean, we were there.
Yeah.
And when you were staying in Vienna, did you come into contact with the neighbors, with
What
the other?
neighbor?
No.
Are you
It was a high
dreaming?
school. We stayed in a high
But
school.
was it near a residential area next to residential buildings with Austrians living?
What age you mean? Which year do you mean?
No, when you were in Vienna, when you were
in 44?
in 44.
Because I had experience in 56 as well, don't forget. I'm
But
not just a survivor. I did the second,
in 44, and when you were in
the
Vienna,
continuation as well. So
Even you,
No,
but it's
I
true.
mean,
But when you were in
everywhere.
Vienna, in the school where you were staying, the residential buildings nearby.
No, when I was in this school was by-embodied, you know, a school. First of all, it was no neighborhood. I didn't go to school to learn. I lived in this school because I was put there. It was no neighbor. We didn't see anything. But funny enough, I just found a letter from Seoul.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Tauster, yeah. He was writing to me because he I don't know whether you heard about this woodcut, what my brother did after the war to instead of writing down, he showed what happened to the Jews during the, and somebody found he did 16 woodcuts showing the way they tried to get rid of the Jews. And this gentleman in America, he worked on it, and they reproduced the things. I was just reading a letter from here because we corresponded, and I was telling him while I was in this Holzplatz, it was raining or whatever happened, they asked me, or they told me, to go to a little storeroom, and I had to stamp the Brotmarke, you know, vernichten, what you call megsemmisíteni. Vernichtung in German.
Annihilate.
To get, because it was still valid. The date was still on, and you could buy bread. And
These are coupons, I guess.
the coupons, they said
Yeah,
you
they
have
had-
to stamp it.
Yeah.
They didn't say anything. They thought,
Well,
and I thought, it's funny, you know.
This I know because it happened recently, about 20 years ago, 25 years ago. This guy, Tauster, his name was Tauster, he was a professor of law in
Brandeis University.
Brandeis University. It's a Jewish school it's a Jewish university in New York, in America. And his father was in the DP camps. He was American also. In 1945, he went to the DP camps. He was a representative of a government, I guess. And he, 1946 was the first Seder when liberated. And this guy, Shanson, he was a Polish guy. He wrote Haggadah, paralleling what happened to us in Germany and to
I will
Egypt.
show it to you. I will give you a copy of it.
And my uncle, he made the woodcuts. And for some reason, and nobody knows how, the Polish guy had the prose, for, the story about the Germans, how they treated us like in Egypt, 2,000 years earlier. But that was an illustration from my uncle. And nobody knows how they got it together. And the original Haggadah was the first 1946 Passover for the American Army.
The American Army started doing it for those who were still in camps a year later.
In the DP camps?
They couldn't, or they wouldn't, or God knows where they were.
This is for the army. They made that for the Jewish people in the army, American army.
They made the Seder.
Matter of fact, the book, the original book, was a regular Sagada, but the front was a big A. It's for American army. It's a very interesting book. And the woodcuts was from Sri Adler, my uncle. But they have no idea. This guy, the professor, couldn't figure it out, and we couldn't figure it out. My uncle in Hungary and this guy in Poland, and somehow they got together.
Yeah, somehow it got out, and they combined what happened in Egypt
With what happened?
once upon a time and what Hitler did. And it's written in Hebrew and Yiddish. It's very interesting.
And Eva, can I ask, how long did you stay in Vienna?
We stayed until early April, when the lager was had to be emptied because the Soviet troops already near Vienna, and they didn't want us to be liberated, God forbid. So we started walking 11 of us. We were still 11 together. And this was the time when Gabor's mom said enough is enough, with 3 children, because her sister had two.
Her sister had 2 children, and I had 1, and we were together the whole family.
And she said, this is the place where we say goodbye. Let's hope the best that we will see each other again. And we tried to hide, and we said goodbye in the dark. And that's how the 2 mothers and the 3 children said goodbye. And we carried on. Not very long, because whoever discovered the little shed somewhere, let's see what's inside. And my brother went there and he tried to open it, and it was open, and we managed to get in, 6 of us, the 6 grown-ups. And we were there during the night, but next day we were discovered by the Volkssturms. The Volkssturms, they were a part of the soldiers. And they were not rough, and just they took us somewhere a smaller place where we could sit down, and I could take off my shoes and my socks, because it was terrible walking all night and waiting for the good fortune. Anyway, they took me somewhere to get some water, a bucket of water. I remember that. And we went back. Eventually, they opened the door, and a cart, horse and cart came with many Jews, and we 6 of us joined this people, and we were taken to a little place near Vienna, where again some cattle cart was waiting for us. And then the train started, and We didn't stop until Czechoslovakia. We reached Theresienstadt. But we were only 6 with these other people, but it was nearly full as well. We arrived there early April. And we were in Theresienstadt. My mother and myself on the 3rd floor in a barrack called the Dresden. I thought it was Theresienstadt. I didn't know it was a big concern. Just when we were in Dresden, it was just this building. We didn't see anything. We couldn't go anywhere. We couldn't even go to the yard, as far as I remember. We were only on the 3rd floor. And my brother and my sister-in-law, they were in the loft, and my sister-in-law's parents were already ill. They got into the Krankenzimmer, it's like a hospital, where they stayed. And we were there, and sort of lunchtime they brought the barley soup. I only remember the barley soup because my mother said, if I survive this, I will make sure that I will I will put the barley cooked into the soil, you know, because she had enough of barley, because they couldn't get anything else, just barley. So every day it was barley soup.
At least you had soup.
And did you have to work in Theresienstadt?
No, not us, because we were latecomers, and it was April 45. Don't forget, it was 4 weeks away from VE Day. Just before VE Day came on the 8th, 2 days before that, I turned sweet 16.
You have a party?
And for sweet 16, we had from the Red Cross a little parcel. The children got a little parcel with sweets. We had condensed milk in a tin. I said, what's that? Oh, we Hungarians, we didn't know about condensed milk. But milk was flüssig, you know, it was... Anyway, I said, how do you get into this thing? Because we didn't bring any tin opener from Debrecen. Anyway, this was for the children, but it was a piece of chocolate. Long last I had a piece of chocolate, which was heaven.
When did you last taste chocolate? Was before the war?
I was living on chocolate. I didn't need anything else because we had a shop. I didn't have to buy it. I just had to take it up.
And in Theresienstadt, did you see any of the other inmates?
I saw something when 2 sisters met.
When 2 sisters?
Met, yeah. They didn't know about each other for years.
And they reunited?
They were united, queuing for the barley soup. I saw that. And somebody said that the Russians are coming. It was on the 8th. And the others said, the Germans are retreating. If you don't believe me, go to the window and have a look. And I rushed, it was on the corridor, I rushed to my room. My bed was near the window, and I stepped on the bed to look through the window, and suddenly a German on the street, rifle, and pulled the trigger. The shot just went above my head, and I went back to Theresienstadt twice because I wanted to see the hole on the wall, because it was just under the ceiling, shooting up just above my head. And first I went back in 95 when I didn't know anything about Theresienstadt. I only knew the Dresden where we stayed. And when they said, and this was the laundry, and this was the children, and I didn't know where I was. You know, because once we got out of there, we got out of there, and that's it, end of story. But it was huge. It was a big place. The second time when Gabor's son, he decided to go there, and they asked me to accompany, but I said the only if I can go back to the Dresden, because I want to see the hole in the wall.
And did you find the hole in the wall?
No, you couldn't even go to the yard because the building itself was rotting away. I don't know, maybe demolished it since, I don't know, but we were not allowed to go in at all. It was cordoned off and everything. But I managed to get to the fence, but I couldn't go up. And this was the second time. The first time I met a gun when we had a night when broken into our home before it was the ghetto. My mother was sleeping in the dining room, and the next room, Gabor was 3 years old, and her mother and myself next to each other. And suddenly I heard that my mother is talking, and I opened my eyes, and my sister-in-law says, "We are visitors, Hungarians." My mother needed some work, and one of the guys, he brought some people during the night, and one opened the door and came in, and he came into my bed, and I closed my eyes, and I was asleep, and when he approached with a gun, jewelry and money, and I opened my eyes as I just woke up. I said, oh, they want to kill me. And my mother heard me. She came back, she said, "What do you want from this little child? She hasn't got anything. What do you want with a gun?" And I thought, thank God I lost half of my earring, to know the little thingy. And they wanted money and jewelry. And I tell you a secret, but don't tell anyone how to save money. My mother, she wasn't born yesterday. she had whatever we didn't have any jewelry there because with his father I helped him to bury some of the jewelry. Who found it at the end, it's another matter. But anyway, she had a little sort of wardrobe where she kept all the tablecloth and things, and she had the money and whatever she had there, and jewelry, money in Hungary, and they didn't speak German. And my mother grabbed the thing and she started throwing down the floor, and the little money was always in her hand. And then she said, "You see, I have nothing." And she was holding it. Anyway, that's how she managed to save whatever she... Yeah.
And Eva, what is your memories when you were liberated?
When we were liberated, it was another mindset. When they said that the Germans are retreating and they were not sure whether the German authority and the Jewish authority, they will be able to come to certain agreement to save the people, because the whole place, as I said, Theresienstadt was the place where we stayed. I didn't know anything about it. Undermined, and they will blow up the whole lager, or if the Jews let the Germans go, they will save us. That's what somebody said. And we were waiting. It was late afternoon. And last week, one of the ladies who used to be an educator, she had a medal given by King Charles III a few weeks ago, and she was liberated there. She was 6 years old. She spent 3 years there, survived on her own, 6 years old. I said, "Do you remember?" You can't remember. Did you hear anything about the liberation? No, she couldn't. You know, she was a child. She was brought here, and then she became English. You know how it is, a child adaptable, and it takes 2 days to change from here to there. No parents, no family, no nothing, then carry on as they can. Anyway, we didn't hear anything else, but about an hour later, somebody is running in the corridor, going, immediately, all the girls, all the women, inside, lock the door. I didn't know what was going on. The Russians are here. We were liberated. I thought, from the frying pan immediately right into the fire. But, you know, sex wasn't an open thing like it is now, whether it's good, bad, or wicked. Those days, it was different. And we didn't know anything about the Russians, that they were fighting I don't know how many years now, and of course sex is part of life. They needed opposite those days, and I thought, we buy another group. And that's it. And eventually we were liberated by the Russians.
And were there some good Russians? Were there any Jewish Russian soldiers?
It was one nice Russian who was befriended with my sister-in-law's sister. I don't know, probably you heard about Gabor's mother. She was one of 9 sisters. 6 of them were in Auschwitz. And they returned, all 6 of them. When my brother married, suddenly I had 9 sisters. Before that I had 3 brothers. And they took us in, my mother and myself. And it was Peter, was it Peter? The Russian guy.
I don't know.
You don't remember?
Peter?
But it was a Russian. It was a Russian who befriended with the girls. No sex, please. They were not British. But he helped a lot. He was very, very nice to the girls. And eventually he went back to Russia. So you could find, But the sweet ending was, I don't speak Yiddish, I told you. But I heard somebody was talking about a Yiddish soldier from Keretsky. Keretsky, what we called Keretske, was a little village in Czechoslovakia, near Berehovo, if you heard this place, which called Beregszás in Hungarian. And somebody was saying Keretsky was a little tiny place, never been there, just I could imagine that. Anyway, my cousin, my aunt, who married a Klein, and their eldest son was in Debrecen during this period. He was working there, and one day he said to my mother, I'm going back home to Keretsky. My mother said, don't, you hear the news, it's no good, stay with us and Kesara. No, he is going, but you will do this. And he said, you don't worry, Auntie Charlotte. If I have the opportunity, I will escape. And when they said that Yiddish soldat from Keretsky, he was Minderheilmecken, a very brave guy. I said, who is this soldat from Keretsky? They don't know. What's the name? They don't know. I said, look, I had cousins in this little place, and I wonder, who is going? X is going to see this guy from Keretsky. I said, do you mind if I write a little? And I wrote a little piece of paper that I'm Evie, the daughter of Auntie Charlotte. If you are my cousin, we are here in Theresienstadt with my mother, my brother Miklos, and my sister-in-law. and we are in Theresienstadt. And I gave this Fetzen paper. A week later I heard my name mentioned. They were looking for me. We were in having a shower. We couldn't see each other. We were talking through the wall or something. And it was him. He escaped from wherever he was. He joined the Soviet army, and he was, you know, he was a motor man, top to toe. And he joined them, and he was in a soldat uniform, and eventually he came for us, and he took us to Prague into his place, 4 of us, and he moved out. We were there a few days, just a few days, and every day he took us to the station to get the train back. It wasn't you buy the ticket and get on that. It was not like that. Anyway, eventually a train came, and nicely and slowly we went back to Hungary.
Did you go back to Debrecen?
Yeah.
And was the house still there, or?
The house was still there, but we couldn't go in, of course. But my sister-in-law's sister, they had a place somewhere, and this Peter, he was a good help. And we joined there when the guy came back. When my mother's shop was, he said, if you want to open the shop, and he was the only survivor. His in-laws and his wife, everybody died. You know, it was just a bit here, another one there, so it wasn't... Anyway, he had a little apartment, and we moved there, my mother and myself, and we lived there a year or so for a while, and my sister-in-law's parents made back to Hungary with typhoid. They had typhus, and they arrived to Budapest, straight to one of the hospitals, where they died within 2-3 days each other.
Right.
And they are buried there in Budapest. And we lived in Debrecen until my brother was teaching after the war, and his school moved to another city, and we moved to their place, and we were there until I got married in 1950, and the rest is just like that.
And Eva, can I ask, when you came back to Debrecen, what about the neighbors that saw that? Did you have very bad experiences with the neighbors when they saw that the Jews had come back?
No, I can't even remember any neighbors from the old place. I don't think one neighbor, Jewish, neighbor opposite, who lived opposite. I even have a letter from her. She ended up in America, and she wrote to me that she was looking for Gabor as Adler, and her name is Klein. Everybody Klein.
Who was that?
You wouldn't know. She lived number 13.
And what was the name of your street where you grew up? Do you remember?
Chokonai.
And you couldn't go back to your old house, or the?
No, but what my mother did, they said they killed my own family, but I won't give the house to them. And she managed to get it back, the ownership, and she sold it.
Because that is quite rare. That's very rare.
That's what she did. She said, they can't take everything from me. Yeah, it wasn't a big oi, but whatever she had, she split it between three of us, my brother, Gabor, and myself.
And was there any of the furniture left in the house, or?
Forget it.
It was all taken.
Forget it. That's, furniture.
And was it very difficult to live back in Everton? You managed?
Look, we are funny animals. We just carry on with the art. We do what comes, and you.
Go, ready to go.
And Eva, I would like to ask, Eva, did you manage to keep your emunah?
Thank you.
I know it's a very difficult question. It's an incredibly difficult question.
Look, first of all, when I finished, I was 14 when I finished secondary school. Then I could go to the gymnasium, but first from my girls' school I had to do certain subjects, exams of certain subjects like Latin and arithmetic and God knows what, to be able to carry on with the gymnasium. But the Jewish gymnasium died with the war, and I didn't want to go to a non-Jewish school.
But your faith, and did you manage to go to shul after the war when you came back?
Yeah, we did, yeah. Yeah, and I don't know what you know about the Russians. The Russians, they have no faith, they have no...
But straight after the war, when you came back, did they re-establish a synagogue? Or
yeah, the synagogue was always synagogue, whether you went there or not. Forget about Debrecen. When I got married, I lived not very far from Dohány. I don't know whether you...
That's in Budapest.
Yeah. And then eventually I was working there, and I could walk from my place to the workplace, crossing the Dohány Shul. And when it was Yom Tov, when it was Yizkor, that's how I made my way from home. I stopped to the synagogue to say Yeskor, and then I went to work through that. But the very first place, I didn't work for a while, but they said, how can you live if you don't work? How can you buy food if you don't work? How do you buy things? Where do you get the money if you don't work? So everybody I knew, they have to find work for me. And they found my husband was in shoes. And, you know, somebody said, I know an accountant. They need somebody in the accounts office. Can she do, I don't know what. I learned to type because, funny enough, God was looking after me. When my mother sold the house, she asked me what I want. I said, I typewriter. I want a typewriter. And she bought me a Remington. And somebody was living with us because we already moved to my in-laws, my brothers, where they used to live, a Piac utca 61, and we had an extra room there, and she came to stay with us. We had the same subject after the war, and I said, look, we are going to learn to use the typewriter, because my mother bought me this Remington, because our teacher decided to do monthly paper where we have to write the articles. She said, okay. We went to do stenography and typing because I got the typewriter already. And then my brother came home one day. How are you managing with the typewriter? I said, I know the main thing, you know. Then write down, he said something, write down. I said, I don't know the next row yet. Yet, just the main thing. Anyway, I managed to use the typewriter, and they found me a place in the office of the, it was everything,
Nationalized, you know what
This
that
is
means.
when it was under communism.
Yeah, it was under the communist.
They went through.
Yeah, they found me a job there in the accounts department, and they took me on. I said, look, tomorrow is Rosh Hashanah. I don't want to start on Rosh Hashanah. He said, okay, you have your New Year, but you have to start next week. I said, it's Yom Kippur. He said, take it or leave it. And he was Jewish. And I took the job. Not only, but one of them said, look, here is a pencil. You just hold the pencil in your hand. Thursday, Yom Kippur. You don't have to do anything. You just, then this Jew came, he said, I need a letter, and he dictated a letter. I had to write it.
On Yom Kippur.
Yom Kippur. Yeah.
I'm just And Eva, how long did you stay in Hungary before you managed
Until
to...
56.
When they had the revolution, when the revolt?
The revolution was under my nose, and I didn't know anything about it. Because by that time I was working in a school, and one day, lunchtime, I was on my own in the office, and the phone rang, and I took the phone, and somebody said, can I talk to so-and-so? So-and-so was out for lunch. I said, no, she is not here. Would I be kind enough to tell her to come to the main office? And I put the receiver down. I thought, she has nothing to do with the main office. School. And I phoned the main office back, and I said, excuse me, I'm so sorry I just had this phone call from your office. Did I hear the name? She said, oh yeah. And that's it. I just didn't know what. She has nothing to do with them or the office or whatever. When October the 23rd came, the day of the revolution, I was already in hospital because I was pregnant, and anyway, I had to go to hospital. And when they let me, or they didn't let me out, my brother-in-law said that they will arrange a car for me to get out of the hospital because it's better if but I can't go home because their uncle and family in our home, because he was a little bit of red, he wanted to thank the Hungarians what they did during the, not revolution, the Nazism or whatever you call it. And he joined the police a little bit, to thank them, what they did to him. He was well-built footballer, and they wanted to escape, but they are afraid to go through Austria. They did the journey through Yugoslavia. It was safer for them because they wanted to kill him again, And then my brother-in-law said, look, it's no other solution. We have to take you to mother's. So I stayed with my mother-in-law, and in the same building was one of the teachers from the school where I used to work in the accounts. And he says to me, you made a mistake. I said, really? What have I done? You shouldn't have phoned the main office. I said, when did I phone the main office? When you queried whether it was so-and-so or so-and-so was called to go there. Because they were part of this revolution thing. And one of them was working in the same office where I was working. And I didn't know.
And how did you manage to leave?
Then I managed to, yes, we just walked from Hungary to Austria. Snow up to here, ice like that. We walked on this. We had many, whatever we had, it was on our body, and only my husband and myself, and somebody who had our apartment. It wasn't a big but it was the best place in Budapest, in the middle of everything.
The center.
In the center, walking distance to the theaters. Anyway, that he will find somebody who will help us to. I was 4 months pregnant, and eventually somebody came, and it was already a bit dark at 5 o'clock when we can start. And we started, and he said, when I sat down, they find rockets to try to find people escaping, then you have to go down. Anyway, he came until midnight, and he said, "Can you see the light over there? It's Austria. You just go straight." And he went back. And we started walking on all this, and suddenly 2 soldiers with rifles, not one gun, 2 with rifles, stop, halt. Back, I said, not a step backwards. If you bring a car here, I might be, but I'm not going back. And my husband started, my wife is pregnant, and I said, I'm not going backwards. No way. But look, we have some drink because the people gave us, and Marcos Bagley, poppy seed cake, but it was Christmas. I said, I got all the Christmas, you can enjoy it, got some money as well, but we are not going back. Eventually, they let us carry on. I said to my husband, look, if they shoot, they will shoot from the back, but we have to take a chance. And we did. We managed to walk to Austria. By 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock we were there. The light which was over there.
And how long did you stay in Austria?
Well, she went to the hospital. She was the baby,
Yeah.
Very messy situation.
I was in hospital in and out 8 months because they didn't keep me longer than 6 weeks. They kicked me out. I was out for 2 weeks and I was rushed back to hospital again for 6 weeks. Then they let me out again, and the 3rd time they tried to treat me with heat, and when the big slap came, the top notch, they said, out with the heat, bring the ice whatnot. I said, okay, thank you very much. I'm not your Versuchungskaninchen, you know. You do it on somebody else, I'm leaving. No, you can't. I said, I can. And next week I went out. I left. Then my husband was already in another lager in Korneuburg. And then I went, it was a Krankenzimmer immediately. And we had fun there. We met very good friends there, as usual. You know, where is the friendship developed in Zores. And then this, the meantime, of course, my mother and brother, sister-in-law, they already managed to leave Hungary. And some of the students from the old place from Debrecen, they said, they told my brother, why don't you ask your sister to come to Israel? And one of their friend, he's a gynecologist, was in Givatayim. And maybe he will be able to help. So eventually I said to my husband, that's it. He didn't want to go to Israel because his cousins, they were not very keen on white. Why not in America? Anyway, I managed to get, they said, you can't go, only you have to fly. But the Jewish agency wouldn't fly me to Israel. I had to take the boat. Even then I thought, if I have to live, I will live. And I made Aliyah. And eventually I started getting better. And I thought, if I'm better, I go to the Ulpan. And I went back to Gelim. Sure. And I learned the lingo. Then it was a course for Anchalat Heshbonot. I thought I will take this as well. Why not? And then I managed to have a place in Rishon, Matzot Rishon, and I worked there 10 months or so. And then my mother said, look, it's not a solution. Your husband in England, the meantime, he managed to get a job in here, in South Wales. And if you have to decide, it's your decision. So we started, and then started to roll the balls, and the correspondent between the factory and the authority in Great Britain, because it was in South Wales, and they let me in. So I'm here, that's why I'm meeting you.
And Eva, and your mother, where was your mother? Where did your mother go?
My mother stayed in Israel,
She stayed in Israel.
With my brother, and when my brother died, he died in 1965.
He's a famous painter, Tzvi Adler.
And as I said, he was 55 when he died, and my mother was 80, and we brought her here, And then the correspondence started with the authority and my mother, and I got the letter from the Home Office that she can stay and she doesn't have to report all the time anymore, and that's it.
That's how you.
So-
that's how you met her. You
So
know.
Eva, I
This is-
wanna just thank you so very, very much.
And
But
if
Eva-
you want to know, I didn't want to bury my mother in England. We buried her in Israel,
You did bury in Israel, sure.
next to my brother.
That's so special.
Yeah.
And Eva, I would like to ask you, what message do you give? You've seen everything. You've seen harrowing. You've lived through harrowing. You've lived
Because
through.
I am always there, whatever I remember, I am there.
But what message do you give to the future generations?
They are not interested. The only one who ever told me, you don't know his family. Gabor took his family, the grandchildren, in 2012 to Hungary on
Well,
a,
twice. I took them twice.
yeah,
Ha-
but it
heritage
was the
tour.
heritage tour in 2012, and he arranged to have something to eat in the Jewish place, and as
In
we
Debrecen.
in Debrecen, as we were walking, suddenly I stopped between the shul and the eating place, and I said, "Oh, this is the place where I had the chuppah." And his son-in-law, he said, "Why don't you write it down?" He was the only one who asked me. And Ilan, his son,
Is a periodontist.
who wanted to go to Auschwitz and Theresienstadt, and I said, if it's Theresienstadt, I want to see the whole. I said, okay, then I join you.
Well, Eva, I'm so grateful to you, and I just want to thank you. This has been for me very, very, very special, and everybody is interested because your story and what you went through there's ein milim, there's no words.
Do you know
There really are no words. You
when-
are so courageous, Eva. You're amazing. You are, you know the word gibora. You really are such a gib. And you know, Eva, can I mention something? That the train didn't take you into Auschwitz is a miracle. It's a miracle that it reversed.
Look, I used to say that, yes, I am lucky. I feel lucky because I escaped so many times without doing anything.
That the German shot while they were retreating. Why would he want to shoot and kill?
Can you
And-
imagine?
And the bullet
when-
just missed.
When the guy comes, I'm 14 years old, and he comes
With a
like
gun.
this,
It's miracles.
money, and I don't know what to do. I just say, he want to kill me. And my mother said, what do you want to do? My mother was a strong, and my brother, you know, willy-nilly, I learned from them because they were so talented and so good.
Well,
Nashima.
I think you so courageous, you yourself, Eva, and I'm so incredibly grateful to you. And you should just have at Stream 120 in good health, and you should just be well and have nachas and really all of Hashem's blessings, because you are a miracle, and all the miracles that happen to you, it really is a miracle.
Look, it happened to everybody, just as I said, because with all this business, eventually I had no children. And my mind is always somewhere. And it's so vivid that I'm not remembering I'm there.
You're there.
I'm there. I just close my eyes and I'm there.
Well, personally, I want to thank you because you've made us feel that we're there as well. I really feel that it's so real what you spoke and from your heart, and we feel that we're there, and whoever will watch this will feel that they're there too. And you have the most amazing story, and your parents, and you are such an example for all of us, and I'm so incredibly grateful to you.
Can you imagine my mother being 44 years old with 3 grown-up sons and the little Nixley in the pram? Can you imagine?
It's a miracle as well. Yeah.
I just don't know how she did it.
And that your father passed away when you were so young.
Yeah, I was 15 months old.
Well, Eva, you should just be well and just have...
I'm well.
And have all of Hashem's blessings and a Chag Sameach. And you should just really, really be well. And Eva, I'm extremely grateful to you. Extremely. Gabar?
My mother was a very exceptional person, not just pretty inside, but outside, gorgeous. I mean, Larry used to know her. And she had a special neshama.
You come from such a special family, Gabar.
I was very close to her.
You see, you have a very close connection with Eva.
Yeah. Eva is the only relative I have from my father's side. She's...
Eva, if you could relate again what you said about in your blue jacket, in your blue coat, what you had in Vienna, that you kept a piece of bread for...
Yeah.
bread.
Look.
You always kept a piece of bread for Gabar?
Yeah. Whenever I could, yes.
And Gabar was your favorite?
Yeah. My favorite nephew.
I was the only one.
I had no choice. But he was so sweet, and he could laugh. I remember him when he was in his little bed, walking around, and he's calling his mother, and mother didn't come. And he was talking to himself. He said, she didn't hear me. She said to himself, and as he was walking, he put one leg on the top of, he wanted to come out. Couldn't make it. Look, this is the Passover Haggadah, what was arranged by the American Army. And if you go through, you can see how it is written in English, in Hebrew,
and it's got the woodcuts.
Kol dor vador.
And these woodcuts were done by your brother?
Yes, and then in Yiddish. In Yiddish, when we were slaves to Hitler. Anyway, I can give you this one. This is an extra copy.
Eva, thank you so much. I
And
will
this
treasure
is the
this.
one what the Americans arranged for the Jews
Yeah,
who
for
were
the first
still
Seder, 46.
who were
You see
still
the A on top of
The A's for the American.
in the camp.
no, I mean you have the this is no there is the A. Oh.
This is the Haggadah.
It's called the Survivor's Haggadah.
The Survivors Haggadah. This, it started from us. It started on this one because I have the original, what was my brother's work. But the way he arranged it, his original woodcuts, 16 woodcuts, which shows what Hitler made do.
And this is Nicholas Adler.
I don't want to take this one out. Look.
Excuse me, I'll be back. I have to go to the little boy.
And it's called Beyond Words.
Yeah. They call it Beyond Words, but he had no...
Thank you very much.
He goes through
Still working. The work never ends, looks like.
this was
This is your brother.
my brother, yeah. And it starts in here. This is number 1. And it goes through on 16 pages.
Eva, can we just go through each one because it's incredible what he's done.
Yes, and he did it immediately as we returned back to Hungary.
This was immediately after the war.
Immediately before Landsman, do you know the one who did the Shoah? He did it in 1945. All the woodcuts with the explanation, and he goes through what they did to the Jews, page by page, because he wasn't a writer, and he said in his words that this is his method. He wants to tell the world what they did to the Jews. And nobody took any notice because they had to wait 75 or 80 years to wake up
Yeah.
when so many people were more murdered. They realized that they should have done what they haven't done at the beginning, what my brother started. See all the pages?
And these are all woodcut from the original woodcuts. That's incredible. He was so gifted. He was so...
Yeah, he was an artist. And he was a mensch. And this is the last one.
Lech lecha el haaretz.
Yeah.
And Eva, where are the original woodcuts today?
Pardon?
Where are the original woodcuts?
Look, we left Hungary, all of us. They were, of course, I don't think they took it to Israel when he made Aliyah. I can't remember, because as I said, we walked all the way from Hungary to Vienna. We couldn't carry anything. Now they made the Haggadah, but I gave you to a book like this.
Yeah.
And this is Saul Toaster, whose father was with the army there in 1946. But this is the copy of the Haggadah. See the A?
That's a copy.
Yeah. This is the big edition of the little thing. This is the last one I had, and it says the Passover Seder service in Deutsche Theater.
From Munich, Germany.
Yeah, in 1946. And then here with his explanation on each woodcuts. That's how we come in. And this is my mother and my brother when they came to the airport to say goodbye to me when I was coming here. And this is in Cholon. My mother, Gabor's two aunts and her husband. And this is my brother Miklos and my mother. I wanted to show you this photo. This was taken when my mother was 44, widowed, and we are in the Shloshim.
Of your father?
But my father died. And this is Gabor's father here, and he is holding me.
He's holding you, you in the middle.
Yeah, he is holding me.
And your mother?
And this is my mother. And this little boy and the sister, the children of this my mother's brother, he was widowed in here when this was taken, and his son and my uncle, they were in Dachau, and he was killed in front of his son because he was so ill he couldn't keep quiet, and the Germans said not to shout, not to say anything, keep quiet, and he couldn't keep quiet. He just and he went and he twisted his neck, and he's killed in front of him. He survived, and he was telling us what happened. Eventually, he lived in Romania, and he made Aliyah, can't remember the year, but unfortunately he was electrocuted in Israel, and he died very, very young. Yeah.
And Eva, who else is in this picture? This is the most unbelievable picture.
And just for fun, this little boy, he was 3 years older than me, and I was about the same size as his sister's dolls. And he didn't know why I was running around and yapping all the time, when the sisters' dolls, they are just sitting by the wall and doing nothing. And he went to my mother and he said, it's a living doll. So when my mother said to me, since then I call this picture the living doll.
And your grandparents, they're in the...
Yeah, my mother, her mother, she is my grandmother and grandfather.
They were very religious. They were very religious.
They were, of course, look. And my mother used to have a shaitel. I used to play with it. But she used to take it when she went to visit her parents. Now, this is one of the sister and husband. This is the youngest sister, and
Eva, this picture is incredible, and this was in 1930, the shloshim of your father.
Yeah. It's well, this was in Debrecen.
yeah. No, this was taken in Hunyad.
Oh, Hunyad.
I thought shloshim means the third in 1930.
No,
Oh, this was a 30 days.
They are my mother's sisters with husbands, and the boy who is sitting on the floor is Gabor's father, and I'm in his lap, sitting there, and the little boy is my uncle's son and his daughter, and my uncle was killed in front of his son in Buchenwald, in Dachau.
How did this picture survive?
Only my mother and myself, and this uncle, he survived as well.
So
Three of them survived. Yeah, because nobody else.
Nobody else survived?
No, luckily my grandparents died just before 1944, just before the deportation.
So, Eva, can you show us who survived from this picture?
My mother, his son, my uncle's son, my uncle, this one, and myself. 4 of us survived. They were in Auschwitz. They were in Auschwitz. He died in Dachau. And he died just during 44 in Hungary.
And the lady next to...
She died in 43, I think.
But how did you manage to keep this picture? How did you find
I
this
don't know who
picture?
found it. Somebody found the picture after the war. Probably in Romania. Because we didn't have any, as I said, but what I found I couldn't keep.
And in this...
Yeah, this is in Israel.
That is your mother?
My mother, yeah. My mother in Israel.
And this picture...
This was my eldest brother. And Miklos, this is a self-portrait. Here I got all 3 of my brothers and my mother.
Eva, really, thank you so very, very much.
Pleasure.